So, Michael, recently I saw the Barbie movie.
Wow, finally you decided to stop being a misogynist.
Yes, and of course, well, I did see it in a perhaps somewhat illegal capacity.
Good.
So, yeah, I'm not really supporting the
Women
female
directors, yeah.
Yeah, the female vision of Greta Gerwig. I think I'm a bit dazed and confused as to why it had such high ratings on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
I'm confused basically because I didn't think it was that good. And I don't know how it's grossed $1.4 billion.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like part of it. I don't know if you've heard of it. There was this phenomenon called Barbenheimer.
Maybe that's it.
So it could have been that. Although that was quite an obscure thing, so I don't know if it could have accounted for it. Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke. And this week we've got a bit of a special episode. So you might have noticed the title of this podcast or this episode is Dazed and Confused Review. And interestingly, we're actually going to be reviewing Dazed and Confused. Just a kind of interesting coincidence there. And of course, the reason we're going to be reviewing Dazed and Confused is because it is the 30-year anniversary of this film. Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Dazed and also Confused?
So, Dazed and Confused is a 1993 American coming-of-age comedy film written and directed by Richard Linklater. The film features a large ensemble cast, Michael. Would you like me to go through some of them?
Yes, I would actually.
So the thing is, it's not actually, there's nobody listed, on the sidebar on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
They're not listed there. So we're going to have to, it's kind of
have to scroll down to the cast section or whatever.
Well, that's the thing. It's mentioned in the opening paragraph. It's very unusual. But anyway, Jason London, Ben Affleck, Mila Jovovich, who has one line, Cole Hauser, Parker Posey, Adam Goldberg, and all right, it's Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Again, Nikki Katz, Joey Lauren Adams, and Rory Catrain. The movie came out on September the 24th, 1993. So yeah, we're almost at its 30-year anniversary. We are so close. But yeah, Michael, can you tell me what the budget was for Dazed and Confused?
Well, I assume almost every single person in this film, it was their first ever film that, there wasn't really much going on. So it's got to be quite low. I guess I'll let's go, I don't know, 6 million.
That is a very good guess, because It's actually 6.9, lol.
Whoa, that is quite, wow. Well done you.
Yeah, 6.9 million, rounds up to 7, so you're not quite there, Michael, but obviously incredibly close, great job. What about the box office? How much did this rake in?
Yeah, see, this I have no idea about, because I've literally no idea because, oh god. I mean, obviously I know that Mr. Linklater went on to do some more significant films, and maybe therefore this, and I think people do know about this film. I guess maybe it could be a cult classic. I don't know if that is an accurate description.
Oh yes,
but if it is, that would imply it probably didn't make as much money when it initially came out.
That is usually part of it, yes.
I think what I'll probably do is I'm gonna go for the teens, which means that if it's significantly underperformed, I'm probably gonna go over. But I guess I'm gonna say it made 16 million.
Oh, you just went exactly double.
Oh really? Okay. Wow.
It's 8 million. So yeah, the box office, $8 million. Why are we reviewing a movie from 1993, set in 1976, that grossed only $8 million at the box office? Why are we doing that? Well, it's because, Michael, as you said, Dazed and Confused is a cult classic and became a cult classic because it found success on the home video market. Remember those days? The home video market?
Yeah, Blockbuster.
Yeah, so we have nostalgia from when this movie came out, and this movie is about nostalgia from...
Yeah. And remember when you'd bring it home and the person before you hadn't rewound the tape back to the beginning? Yeah,
I know, those were the days. So yeah, we have nostalgia for around the time period when this movie came out, and this movie is all about nostalgia from another time period. So yeah, so much nostalgia going on. But yeah, Michael, did you like Dazed and Confused?
Well, this is one of those classic kind of movies that's not really about anything. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think, to be honest, this film, I think it was helped by the fact that it takes place over the course of just one night. A little bit like kind of Superbad and things like that in that way. And I think that made me more like, okay, I'm able to vibe with this film a lot more. What I was comparing it to, because of the pedophile thing, is Licorice Pizza. And also the fact that like it's a film like that's set in the 70s. It was very reminiscent of Licorice Pizza in terms of like some superficial stuff. And I was thinking, I found Licorice Pizza a little bit more annoying because like it was kind of all over the place. I think having it just be one night made it more focused. So I think I'm going to say, yes, I did like it. Like it very much kind of captures like a feeling, like the feeling, I guess, of youth. I don't know if it's actually a reality for anybody, but this kind of idealized idea of youth in the 70s.
Okay. Who do you think, Michael, this might have been a reality for?
But possibly one Mr. Linklater himself.
Oh, well done. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how autobiographical it is.
Well, considering he was born, I think, in 1960 or something, and grew up in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Maybe it's biographical. Maybe. Yeah. I
he
think
got spanked on the butt.
I think you might be onto something there, Michael. It's not really a coming of age movie, is it? Because it's just one day.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah.
But that's good. I like that. I do like coming of age movies because there's just a natural character arc built into those kind of movies, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's a character arc that I think everybody can pretty much relate to. So yeah, I think when I was watching this movie and I realized it was just going to be a day in the life of these high school kids back in 1976. I was like, okay, that's not going to be that fun. But then once you start watching it, you get into it, and there is a vibe going on. And if you get with that vibe, then you can have a good time. And you compared it to Licorice Pizza. I think actually the kid, Mitch Kramer, the freshman, looks a bit like Elena Haim. Is that her name?
Oh, yeah. That's really funny, yeah.
Yeah, the 25-year-old from Licorice Pizza. And there are some age gaps in this movie which are quite interesting as well. Not as extreme as 15 to 25, but still, yeah, we'll talk about that. But yeah, like it's just it's just a day in the life, and I guess it is a special day in the life because it's the last day of high school for the juniors who have now become seniors and the middle schoolers who are now freshmen in high school.
Yes.
It's an important day in the school year for these guys. So yeah, and it's just like, hey, look at all the shit that went on back in the mid 70s.
Everyone was smoking weed.
And I guess at the time when this movie came out, it would be interesting to contrast it to like the mid 90s. I suspect things were different, a lot different for high school kids, and indeed like for us today. Of course, we're not American, but like I did not drive around. Smoking weed,
spanking kids,
spanking kids. Yeah, no, that and damn it, that's the one I really wish. The one experience I really wish I had.
Yeah, like that's it. We just watched it like, oh man, what could have been?
No, we'll get into all that, the hazing, but yeah, the thing is, Quentin Tarantino, interestingly, called it one of the 10 greatest films of all time.
Oh.
So
well, he jerks off to the past. That's his thing.
He does jerk off to the past. Yeah. He does.
Someone should ask Quentin Tarantino, what are the greatest movies of all time that aren't about the 60s or 70s? And then that's the only way you can get a good answer from him.
Yeah, he couldn't answer, but yeah, obviously, like you said, it became a cult classic, and it makes sense, right? It makes sense that I especially think people who grew up in the 70s, obviously, they watch this and be like, oh, those were the days, and that's kind of the point of the movie. And of course, Linklater. That is definitely with him what I suspect was his motivation behind making this movie. But yeah, so let us get into nitpicks. How many do you have, Michael?
I've got 0.
Oh wow! I thought I was going to stop talking for a sec. No, I've got one nitpick, which is of course this movie is just in the background. The music is from the 1970s, as you would suspect, and it's constant throughout the movie. And I'm just like, I have little appreciation for this time period, and I should be appreciating like it more. I should be like, oh yeah, remember that song? But I'm just like, really no idea I can't appreciate the background noise. And the thing is, you could say, oh, there's too much 70s music, but of course,
they do go for it.
I believe it is. The term is diegetic. I may have got that horribly wrong.
Yeah. So diegetic, I think, means it's in the movie.
Exactly.
Non-diegetic means it's imposed.
Yes. So the kids in the Emporium, in the car, at the party later under that tower, they're playing this music, which you hear in the actual movie. So it's it's not like Linklater is stuffing the movie to the brim with 70s music for nostalgia purposes, and there's a reason the music's in there. It's because the kids are listening to the music as they would do. If this was just like a day in the life kind of movie, well, that's what these kids would be doing. So it completely makes sense that this music's in the movie.
Yeah.
I just can't appreciate it. So it's a nitpick on me, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. I do remember. So like one of the songs they have, the song goes do 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 do, and I was like, what is that from? And I remembered it's from Happy Gilmore. It's like almost the main theme in Happy Gilmore, and apparently it's a Lynyrd Skynyrd song. This one goes do 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 do.
I believe it's called Tuesday's Gone.
Yes, good
because
stuff.
I'm looking at the soundtrack right now.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's the Happy Gilmore song. So I don't know, doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
but there it is. That's my soundtrack observation.
So of course there was some I recognised, which were "Rock and Roll All Night" by Kiss.
Oh yeah, and have a wonderful time.
Have a wonderful time. Great. And then of course the classic, which is actually non-diegetic, when the final bell rings at the high school.
Oh, school's out. Yeah,
school's out for summer. The most obvious. I guess he had to put it in, and it makes so much sense. Actually, what year did that come out? 72.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah, because I know Alice Cooper. He's the one who made it, isn't he? I'm not crazy out there. Yeah.
No.
I feel like he was more in the 80s, but maybe I'm just a complete idiot who has no idea what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, and also Slow Ride. I recognise that one.
Oh yeah. Also, I mean, see, I don't know this song, but on the subject of like the non-diegetic sound. I don't know why I found like No More Mr. Nice Guy when they're doing the spanking. It's just very funny.
Yes,
and
that's funny.
That's something which is parodied in Family Guy.
Yeah, I think so. I was going to mention that later when I'm talking about that scene. It's just very funny because of the music choice. Like, come on, Mr. Nice Guy.
No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah, I know, it's great. But yeah, by the way, School's Out, of course, came out in 72. I'm just thinking, imagine if your final high school year was 71.
Oh my God.
And you couldn't even sing that when you're coming out of school. God, that for those students coming out of high school in 72, because it came out in April 72. So, the classes of 72 would be been able to play that coming out of high school. That must have banged. Absolutely banged. Yeah.
That must have created some generational trauma for the kids who are like after the fact, like, no, what we missed out on.
Fuck, yeah. I know. So anyway, Michael, let's get into this movie, Dazed and Confused. So yeah, like we said, it's just kind of a vibe. It's the adventures of a group of Texas teens in their last day of school in 1976, centering on student Randall Floyd, who moves easily among stoners, jocks, and geeks.
Yeah, he's a social butterfly, I believe they call them.
Yeah, I guess that's the best thing to be, I guess,
Yeah.
It's like, you can just do whatever. Which, I think if you're a geek, you probably can't do that. Like, you need to be like a football player in an American high school to do that. But yeah, Floyd is a star athlete, but he also likes smoking weed, which presents a conundrum when his football coach demands he sign a no drugs pledge. And he says, nah, man, fuck authority. I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah, I like how that's the main conflict.
Yeah, well, I was going to mention that as well, yeah. So, Linklater, by the way, this is from his Wikipedia page, is known to have a distinct style and method of filmmaking. Many of his films are noted for their loosely structured narrative.
I actually don't know, I know of him, but I don't really know, I know he did Boyhood. Yes. And I always think of him as, a pretty famous director, but I actually don't know that many of the films he's done.
Oh, shit, I got it wrong, Michael. Linklater was born in 1960, but he wasn't born in Austin. He was born in Houston.
You idiot.
Fuck. Damn.
That completely invalidates all of your opinions.
Wait, did he move to Austin? I don't think so. Yeah. No, so that's the thing. He also made School of Rock.
Yeah.
So that you get his vibe. It's like, he likes, weed and then drinking, and, he likes that side of life, which, of course, was for him growing up probably, what he most fondly remembers about being a high school student in Texas in the 70s. So yeah, that seems to be his vibe. But he's not a bad director. Obviously, he's very good. This is a good movie. I enjoyed it. But you have to enjoy it for what it is. Of course, there's no plot. Peter Travers gave the film 4 out of 4 stars and praised Linklater as a sly and formidable talent, bringing an anthropologist's eye to the spectacularly funny celebration of the rights of stupidity. His shit-faced American Graffiti, that's a very interesting take on it, is the ultimate party movie. Loud, crude, socially irresponsible, and totally irresistible. Yeah, that's a good point. Linklater in this movie is kind of like an anthropologist. I keep thinking, wow, so this is what life was like in the 70s. but
Yeah.
this was made in the 90s.
That's the thing, yeah.
So yeah, you just have to trust him. It's like, hey, this is a day in the life of this guy, Linklater, in the 70s. You know, he would have been 16 in 1976. It depends, of course, like, you know, when you were born, how much nostalgia, you know, you have towards this movie. But yeah, like, I think that makes sense. But anyway, Michael, how many of these stars did you recognize? You know, these actors who would later become stars. Tell me.
I recognize Jason London because he stars as Jason and the Argonauts in the, I believe, 2000 made-for-TV movie adaptation of Jason and the Argonauts, which was a movie that I just so happened to watch a lot as a kid. As you know, I famously was obsessed with Swords and Sandals movies when I was a kid. That's, you know, anyone who knows me knows that. So yeah, I watched that, and I was like, he actually inspired me to grow my hair long when I was a kid. And of course now I have my hair long now too. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and apart from that, so I spent like so much of the movie being like, that's Ben Affleck, right? That's definitely Ben Affleck, about the kid, you know, the chief spanker.
Yeah, he's called O'Banion, by the way.
O'Banion, yeah, okay. And
and then of course yes, Irish, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then of course he is, but it was kind of weird because I was like, would it be Ben Affleck? Does that make sense? Was he like too big, or like, I don't know, whatever. Adam Goldberg, I recognized, I don't know what from, but I was like, oh my god, that face. He's in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, he's a character actor who's been in many movies.
Yeah.
The thing is, I didn't recognize Ben Affleck at first, but then I did, and I was like, oh yeah, that's Ben Affleck. Yeah, it's like the first scene I didn't really get it, and then when he gets the shotgun pointed at him, I was like, shit, that's Ben Affleck.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think that's kind of when I first was like, oh yeah, that's Ben Affleck. He's doing that face of his.
Yeah, like of course, I think I was aware he was in this movie, but obviously you're not paying attention really to like, oh, where's Ben Affleck? Where is he? And it's just, oh yeah, because of course he could arrive later on in the movie like Matthew McConaughey does. I was thinking like 40 minutes in, I was like, of course we discussed last week in our Tiptoes review that Matthew McConaughey is in this movie, and I was like, well, where is he? And then he kind of shows up and like steals the movie, like almost with his character. Yeah. But yeah, just a couple more things on Dazed and Confused. Desson Howe of the Washington Post wrote, Dazed succeeds on its own terms and reflects American culture so well it becomes part of it, which I think is very true. Like, I think that's the best encapsulation of, you know, we should maybe save that for the review part at the end. That review. But yeah, it's like, yeah, it's trying to show what American culture was like, particularly in the 70s, and it does such a good job, and therefore it becomes a part of it. And especially because it's like, oh, that's what happened back then. And so then, you know, people who were alive in the 70s, of course, they don't remember everything perfectly. They were like, oh, yeah, that's what it was like. And people who weren't alive, obviously, in the 70s were like, oh, that's what it was like. Okay. So, yeah, no, I think that is the case. And so, yeah, we're going to get into this movie now, Michael. Are you ready?
Yeah, I was born ready.
So, it's May the 28th, 1976, the last day of school at Lee High School in Austin, Texas. The next year's group of seniors are preparing for their annual hazing of incoming freshmen. I kind of feel a bit of nostalgia, because of course I was in high school at one time, but I'm so removed from this. It was like almost 40 years later, and, you know, in a completely different country as well. What I really liked about, you know, the opening scene was like, oh yeah, it's the last day of school, and that brought back nostalgia, because is there any better day than the last day of school, Michael?
No. You know, I mean, some might say, you know, that as you become older, maybe there are more important days. But no, yeah, I think, I mean, I was going to say Christmas, because, you know, I do like Christmas, but
Christmas is good as a one day kind of thing.
Yeah, but yeah, last day of school has the promise of, you know, several weeks, and indeed for America, several months of
Yeah, it's mad that the last day of school is the 28th of May.
Yeah.
When I was at school, it was the last day of school was like middle of July.
Also, it reminds me of this time I saw. It was really funny. So it was on Twitter, and it was basically this whole thing, like someone was complaining about like Pride Month in June and like forcing like gay stuff in schools. But somebody replied saying, "Schools aren't open in June, you idiot." And then this started a whole thing about like American exceptionalism, and someone in the tweet was like, I think it actually varies from state to state. And then somebody replied, Americans are so close to discovering countries, which I thought was very funny.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I've heard of like Americans who like break up like before the 4th of July. And also, Americans apparently start school at like 7:30. That's when they start school in the morning at like 7:30 a.m. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, they love getting up early in America.
yeah, but especially for school, like they still do the 9 to 5 thing. That's like we have in the UK, it's 9 to 5. Why the hell are you starting like school like before 8 a.m? What the fuck are you doing? Anyways, sorry. Like back to the movie. So the next year's group of seniors are preparing for the hazing, of course. In general, I'm just, again, it might not be the same today, or it might not have even been the same in the 90s, but it just seems American high schools have just a lot more like freedom than like in the UK.
Yeah, well, they don't like uniforms. By the way, okay, sorry, I just looked this up because I was like, well, they must end earlier then. No, so like it starts around 7:30 a.m., you're right, and it ends around 3 p.m., meaning they're almost doing like a 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
They're doing what, 40-hour work week, but for half an hour. That's crazy.
It's fucking stupid. Stupid fucking country. Yeah, God, imagine like I got up at 7:30 a.m. Imagine getting into school at that time. My God. Right. Especially in the winter, it wouldn't get light for another fucking 2 hours. You'd just be in darkness for 2 hours to start the day. So, Randall Floyd, the school's star football player. By the way, his nickname's Pink Floyd.
Yes. Yeah. I think
Oh, well done, Michael. Yeah, I love your enthusiasm. That is asked to sign a pledge promising not to take drugs during the summer or do anything that would jeopardize the goal of a championship season. And this is the only conflict in the movie.
Yes.
And yeah, the rest is just like a day in the life of various high schoolers or on a special day in high school. And this is the one difference, I guess, storyline in the movie. It's like, oh yeah, this is going to have consequences. The coach wants him to stop hanging out with these losers who are his friends, but he doesn't want to. And and again, throughout the movie, it's brought up constantly. And then at the end, of course, he kind of makes his choice. But yeah, that's it. This is the only conflict. If you like conflict, well, you better love this because that's the only conflict you're getting.
Yeah, it's very ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, basically, it kind of, I don't know, it reminds me of how like all Linkin Park songs are like about just wanting to be independent man and no one's going to tell you what to do. Or that, what's it called? Rage Against the Machine song. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Like, it felt like, in a way, even though this movie was like set in the 70s, it's kind of like funny how much the like idea of, hey man, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do was kind of like a bit of a 90s thing.
No, but like that was also the 70s though.
Yeah, the 70s, I guess, yeah, maybe it was someone makes a comment in the film about how like things are cyclical, right? They said like the 50s was when like they make like a comment about like how like the 70s weren't very good, so the 80s are going to be awesome, which is very funny, especially considering they're doing drugs and stuff, and it's like Reagan. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I think that Linklater put that line in specifically. Yeah. It's like, oh, things can't get any worse. Oh boy, there's a man called Ronald Reagan who lives in California who's coming to change everything. So when classes end, the incoming freshman boys are hunted down by the seniors and paddled. So I imagine this happened, and Linklater obviously remembers it and is putting it in the movie, but it just seems crazy. Like, this is how things were in the past. This is just my reaction, of course. Like, this movie, I guess you have different reactions depending on, how old you were. Just because of, it's set in a specific time. Again, I can't imagine, like, even for American kids who were our age and, of course, who are younger, that this happens. This has to be something from the 70s. Like, hazing is more common in general in the past. But even in the UK, I can't imagine this happened. Like, it goes on at university still, but like in fucking high school to like what would be middle schoolers. Like, when I was just thinking, when did this kind of thing stop? Was it the PC 90s? Was it the Reagan? Because the Reagan era is more about tackling like the abuse, as they would put it, of drugs and alcohol and premarital sex. This wasn't that, of course. Like, hazing is something that I imagine would be kind of acceptable. But so maybe it was like the politically correct 90s that stopped all this shit.
The new rule is that if you're like at a university and you're like working with the kind of the freshers, you're not allowed to pressure them to drink, which of course is funny.
And that was the case for us.
But they still did it, yeah.
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah. That was the case for us like almost fucking 10 years ago. It's still stupid. Anyway, I don't understand the concept of it, but whatever. The point is, like, if you want to join like the football team in fucking university, I get it, or even in high school, but just like joining another high school. And the thing is, it's not just, of course, the boys, it's the girls who were also hazed. They're rounded up in the school parking lot by the seniors and then covered in mustard and ketchup, flour and raw eggs, and forced to propose to senior boys. So this was very weird. Like, the boys hazing other boys, like, I can understand that at least.
Yeah.
But girls, like hazing girls like this. No, I'm sorry, this is alien to me. Like, this is just like, no, this, I cannot imagine this happening today. This is like, I still think like teenage boys somewhat are like psychopaths who could do something like this.
Yeah.
Fucking teenage girls doing this shit and behaving like psychopaths is just like, nah, this is a whole new fucking time. This is just so, like I said, alien to me, you know?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine it actually happened, and I don't know, you almost wonder, maybe Linklater is a dirty liar.
No, I don't think that. That's the thing. I don't think that. I think this absolutely happened.
But, you know, at the same time, I mean, yeah, I think all of this should be taken with a grain of salt, because, you know, like, you could watch American Pie and be like, oh man, like, so everyone's just having sex with each other all the time in high school. It's like, probably not.
Well, no, I mean, it's a completely different fucking thing you're talking about there. It's like American Pie, yeah, kids are having sex with each other. Maybe not at, well, I mean, the idea in American Pie is these 4 people, you know, they want to lose their virginity desperately.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's why they're trying to have sex. But that's, of course, like, high school kids want to have sex with, you know, that's the most common thing ever. But this right here, which is what's happening here, this is just, like, so... I can't imagine Linklater making something like this up. This has to be... Maybe it's exaggerated somewhat. Maybe the worst bits are what he remembers, and things weren't actually that bad. But, like, he's, you know, it's probably pretty close to the truth. Otherwise, he just wouldn't have put it in this movie. Yeah,
you're right. And yeah, I mean, I do agree. It is crazy. You know?
Yeah, that's the thing. Maybe that's part of it. It's just like, oh shit, this happened. Like, it's wild to me. Again, especially the girls hazing the girls, and then there's the proposal part.
Yes,
which is
that
weird.
Was very I would characterize that as weird.
So the senior says to this 14-year-old girl, "Open your mouth, and then do you spit or swallow?" And again, some of the moments in this movie, like it's a comedy movie, but I don't think this is a comedic moment. This is just like. This is kind of the anthropological look at high school. So the movie deviates between like, oh, let's have some comedic moments, you know, that also could have happened, and also this like, day in the life kind of thing. And that was one of those moments, I guess. I imagine Linklater remembers that this was something that was asked. You know, that response probably was a bit too far, but I kind of...
Well, look, you got to... I mean, what we're really dancing around here is the fact that in the past, everybody was a pedo.
Okay, well, I was going to talk about that with McConaughey's character.
Yeah.
This guy, maybe he's not a paedophile, he's just making a joke. But again, he's not a paedophile. I don't think, like, he doesn't necessarily have an attraction to this girl, and he's not serious. He's just like...
No, that's it, yeah.
He's just making a crude joke. And that,
he's of course, not really trying to get with her.
No, exactly. And the crude joke is, like, quote-unquote unacceptable, but these are the kind of jokes that happened, you know? So yeah, it's just, hey, Linklater's just like, hey, this is what happened. And that was one of those moments where that is the case, and it's not played for laughs. It is kind of a nostalgia trip, but it's also like, it's kind of, I don't know what percentage is what, but it is like a nostalgic look at the past. But it's also, this is just all the kind of shit that went on. So you can judge whether things are better now or how different things are now compared to in the mid-70s, you know? So the plans for the evening are ruined when Kevin Pickford's parents discovered his intention to host a keg party. So this is pure Americana right here, Michael. Like, there is nothing more American than having a party at your house in high school when your parents are out of town, and obviously trying not to get caught. That seems to be like, that's what Americans, you know, they love those storylines. That's their favorite storyline in these high school movies.
You know, I guess it's, you know, I mean, that part's believable. I can believe definitely that people did have parties in the 70s. But yeah, I mean, obviously. Isn't Superbad also about them trying to get to a party? I can't really remember Superbad very well. But yeah, obviously with this case, it's kind of interesting to have it be that the whole point is that the party doesn't happen, so that basically they're just like, well, what are we going to do now?
Well,
like, that's basically the logic for the whole film.
Yeah, it forces them to drive around. And that's smart, because they have to go to different locations, and therefore you feel like stuff is happening in the movie, and it doesn't feel stale because they're constantly driving around and moving. Of course, if it was just that one house, then that would not be the case. Interestingly, the Kevin Pickford character, played by Shawn Andrews, was meant to have a larger role, but due to his behaviour with other cast members, Pickford's screen time was cut in favour of Matthew McConaughey's character, Wooderson. Yeah. Linklater recalled, Andrews wasn't really getting along with everybody. I could tell the actors weren't responding to him. Linklater had to break up a fight between Andrews and London at one point. On screen, the two characters barely speak to each other, and therefore Mila Jovovich, who played Michelle, Pickford's girlfriend, had her role reduced because, in Linklater's words, it didn't really gel. So yeah, no Mila Jovovich because Sean Andrews was just too much for Dick. So
Wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
yeah, no, that is interesting. So as day fades into night, freshman Mitch Kramer escapes the initial hazing with his best friend Carl Burnett, but is later cornered after a baseball game and finally paddled. Sorry, again, it's a funny scene.
Yeah.
Fred O'Banion, a senior participating in the hazing tradition, for a second year after failing to graduate, delights in punishing Mitch. Again, it's a weird scene, but it is funny, like you said, right?
Yeah, it is. But it's interesting because it's like, obviously, it also sets him up as a bad guy, like someone who's going to get his comeuppance. Like, we're not really laughing with Ben Affleck. I don't know, I guess good. I guess it's good to have a villain.
Yeah, he is the villain, the bully that gets the comeuppance, yeah. So Mitch Kramer, by the way, is played by Wiley Wiggins, which is a great name.
Yeah.
He was the big find in Austin, according to Linklater. Yeah, I mean, he was only 15, and he gives a great performance, I think, for a 15-year-old. And that that's probably the hardest role to cast. And yeah, I think he's probably one of the best actors in the movie, honestly. Like, I think he's kind of the best thing in the movie. Because these guys they're going to another party or whatever, but he's like the freshman who's like smoking weed for the first time or getting drunk and making out with a girl for the first time, and it's therefore like I guess what he's doing is more interesting because like he's experiencing all of this for the first time.
Yeah, like he needs to do more of a performance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A 15. So Wiley Wiggins, by the way, this is the real guy in real life. A 15-year-old with bad habits of a grad student, according to Linklater. Smoking cigs, hanging out at a coffee shop. My kind of guy. There you go. So, and you can tell from that quote that's what Linklater likes. So, yeah, he's you understand therefore why he was motivated to make this movie. Pink gives the injured Mitch a ride home and offers to take him cruising with friends that night. So yeah, this is again part of me just being envious because he's a 14-year-old kid, and him and everyone else who's like 14, they can just do whatever they want. I guess it's such a completely different era. Like, they all have cars or easy access to cars. They can just drink whenever they want. They can smoke weed. It's fine. Nobody gives a shit. Their parents certainly don't give a shit where they are. Certainly, maybe if you're like 14 or 15, they do. But like past that, it's like, nah, whatever. You can do what the fuck you want. And yeah, it's just, why wasn't I born in this era, Michael? That's what I keep thinking to myself, And that's maybe what Linklater is trying to conjure up, like in terms of nostalgia, like, wasn't this era the best when you can just do this shit? And for all the kids in the 90s who have to worry about pedophiles and AIDS and all the other scary shit going on, which, again, was still, the AIDS wasn't around in the 70s, but, pedophilia.
People weren't worried about it.
And
ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, parents were a lot more, I think, kind of chill about things. And for better or worse, there are some drawbacks to that, of course. You didn't have to, because I do think like the media in general drove a lot of paranoia in like American homes about stuff like like drugs or alcohol. Like the 90s and of course the 80s, they were big on like tackling like premarital sex and like drugs. Never do drugs, just say no. That was from like the late 80s, I think, with Nancy Reagan spearheading that. And yeah, like really curbing underage drinking, which is why I think a lot of drinking law, the age of drinking was raised to 21, I think, in a lot of states. I think
yeah, because there's a moment where somebody says, "Oh, are you sure you're 18?" Or "Are you 18?" And I did have a moment of like, "Wait, that's not the age you can drink." And I was like, "Oh, I guess it's changed."
Yeah, and I think that was part of the reason. Like, so raise the age of drinking to 21, and then you will see less like underage drinking, or high schoolers drinking or whatever. Because this is a 30-year anniversary, of course. So we're looking back at a film that came out 30 years ago, but we got to also think about the context of 1993 compared to 1976 and how this movie would have been perceived because of the differences between 93 and 76. And I think there were some substantial differences. I mean, we mentioned the hazing. I think that might have stopped by then, but also like the drugs and the alcohol and the abstinent stuff as well. That must have been different compared to the 70s, compared to when the movie came out, of course, right? You think I'm right on that?
Yeah, 100%. And it is kind of interesting that this, like, I don't know, the 70s was just kind of wild. I guess, like, also in that it was, like, a point where drugs were, like, almost a new thing. Like, I know they kind of really got started in the 60s, But yeah, like a point at which, I guess it was just fun.
Well, that's the thing. There hadn't been a political movement to scare people concerning drugs. There was just a problem, and it was like, okay, how do we tackle this? And it's like, oh yeah, the kids are smoking weed again, And then Reagan came along and like really weaponized that to scare.
Yeah, like there wasn't like a terrifying thing.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't. Drugs in general weren't terrifying, and then Reagan's like, we can exploit parents' fears. We can do that. And there was the satanic panic as well, of course, which there's no Satanism in this movie, but that was a kind of part of it. So yeah, I do think Linklater with this movie is kind of the reason why this movie was created, because he enjoys the nostalgia. He doesn't enjoy looking back at the good times when they were in high school, but also look at the differences, and that's why this movie would have had some cultural resonance in the 90s because of the stark contrast. Perhaps again, I'm just guessing. I don't know. But we have to consider that, and I think that's the right conclusion. So then Pink and his friend David Wooderson, a man in his early 20s, who still socializes with high school students, pick up Mitch and head for the Emporium, a pool hall frequented by teenagers. All right.
That's what he likes about high school girls.
He said, well, first let's focus on the fact he says the line, all right.
Yes, so that's obviously the famous Matthew McConaughey line, which only comes from this film, I think. I don't know, did he say it elsewhere?
Maybe, I'm not sure. Do you want to say the line again?
All right.
All right. Yeah, but of course, this was just a normal guy in the 70s, a 22-year-old hanging out with 17-year-olds, slapping their asses, and of course, he says that iconic line which you started, that's what I love about these high school girls, man. I get older, they stay the same age. Which
that's you could not pay me to say that line.
Well, I laughed in the middle of it, so people know if ever someone were to clip it. Well, of course, it's a line from this movie. Everyone knows, but it's such a ridiculously like creepy line, and but that's the thing. This character, McConaughey's character, is meant to be like cool. Like he's meant to be like he's not portrayed as a loser, even though that's such a weird line. And indeed, he's trying to date like 17-year-olds, and it's a very weird character, because on one hand you're like, oh yeah, that he just looks like such a cool guy, and then it's like, yeah, but he's saying like very creepy stuff like that. And I think one of them even joke, oh yeah, no, the thing is, he says to fucking Mitch Kramer, the 14-year-old, you got any girls who are coming up who are looking good or something like that?
Yeah.
And these are like 14-year-olds, and maybe it's just a fucking joke or whatever, but like then somebody says, you're gonna go to jail, man, and it's just like,
like they know that it's not an appropriate thing to be saying, but they're still like, just like, oh, you.
Yeah, I know. So did you know, by the way, you don't want to do an impression of that iconic line from McConaughey?
No, although that's also featured in a Family Guy episode.
Yeah, Brian says
Brian
it, right?
says,
yeah. It's just fun to hear. Of course, I heard the line before, and I think in Family Guy as well.
Yes.
So it's just fun to hear it. You're just waiting for the line. And you think he's going to say it, and then he says it, and it's just it's a great delivery.
It's everything you dreamed it would be.
Exactly. Yeah, but yeah, it's just so creepy. But the thing is, McConaughey was not originally cast in the film. The Wooderson role was small and meant to be cast locally for budget reasons. He was a film student at the University of Texas in Austin and went out drinking with his girlfriend one night, and they ended up at the Hyatt Hotel since his friend was a bartender there and could get them a discount. He approached casting director Phillips in the bar. This casting director said, the bartender said to Matthew McConaughey, see that guy down there? That's Don Phillips. He cast Sean Penn in Fast Times. And McConaughey goes, I'm going to go down there and talk to that guy. And Phillips recalls Linklater didn't like McConaughey at first. Why didn't he like McConaughey at first?
I don't know, because he's tall.
Well, that's part of it, because he was too handsome.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So yeah, he's like 6'2", like very well built, good facial features. It's like, and that's my impression. It's like I'm looking at this guy and I'm thinking, oh yeah, it just with his general vibe and the way he looks, it's that guy's a really cool guy, but yeah, he's kind of being like a loser hanging out with high school students when he's like 22. What's going on here? It just doesn't fit. But whatever. I mean, again, like McConaughey is so good in this role, you kind of have to just roll with it, even though he's like, it doesn't really make sense if you think about it overall.
Yeah, you know what? I'm looking, and Matthew McConaughey's career is a lot weirder than I thought it was. Because this was one of his first films, which I didn't know. And then after that, there's like a load of films I've never heard of, and then you immediately get to A Time to Kill. And it's like, okay, that's a pretty big role. But then after that, there's a load of films I've never heard of.
Yeah.
Until you get to like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, where he's like a leading man in a romantic comedy. It's just all over the place.
Yeah, and of course his iconic role in Tiptoes.
That's it, yeah.
Cannot be forgotten. But yeah, interestingly, much of Wooderson's role was improvised to give McConaughey more screen time. So I do wonder how that line about high school girls staying the same age was conceived. Was it McConaughey? Or
Yes,
was it...
he just said it. He said it when he was on a certain island where he made a lot of connections.
Yeah, now this was before Epstein Island,
Oh, good, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Now that he couldn't...
Back in the day when nobody was a paedophile.
Exactly, yeah. No, the thing is, this line, it's an iconic line. Like, of course, it was parodied fucking Family Guy.
Yeah, there's something interestingly comedic about the brazen nonce.
Yes. That's a good phrase, yeah.
Yeah, like, and I don't even know really how to, I guess describe it or like what exactly it is about.
I mean, he's got a point. They do stay the same age, which
is true.
Yeah, that's the inherent cleverness of it. It's like, and it's also predatory. Like, hey, I don't really care. They're just high school girls. Like, I'm just interested in them because they're young. Like they're different, but they're just So it's clever and it's creepy. But Matthew McConaughey has such charisma saying it that you're just like, oh yeah. That's what a great line. And
yeah, you're like, oh, maybe they do. Maybe that is something to like about high school girls.
You've convinced me.
Yes.
Anyway, so as the night progresses, students loiter around the Emporium. Well, McConaughey isn't a student, but whatever. Listen to rock music, cruise the neighborhood, and frequent a local drive-thru. There's a lot of scenes in that drive-thru restaurant, and nothing really happens there. But yeah, whatever. The vibes. This is the vibe stage of the movie. Well, to be honest, the whole movie is vibes, but. Again, you have to be in a mood to watch this. It's one of those movies that if you don't accept what's on the screen, you're going to dislike it. There is no plot, and you're just going to have to deal with that. And I like plots in movies, but I can get myself in the right headspace to be like, okay, this movie doesn't have a plot. It's just purely it's just an experience that you're either in or you're out. And I chose to be in because I thought, it's interesting.
Yeah, basically, like ultimately, it's almost one of those films where I think kind of like you implied, it's your choice whether you want to enjoy it. And you can sit there and you can say, oh, I'm not going to enjoy it because it's a stupid film that's got nothing really of substance to it. But you know what? That's a miserable negative Nancy attitude. And actually, I think a vibe is the best word to describe it, honestly.
Man, I've used that word so many times.
Yeah.
Because it's true. It's just, if you're vibing with it, it's really nice. It's like smoking a joint, Michael,
Yes.
Yeah, you gotta vibe with it, and if you don't like it and have a panic attack, well, then that's not good, right?
No, yeah, that's bad, exactly. And it would make you a loser.
It would make you a horrible loser. Yeah, and I think it's also that, movies like this are unique. So, the movie I watched before this, like I said in the opening, was Barbie. And that's kind of a unique movie as well. But I've watched a lot of movies recently where it's, there is some formulaic aspects to it that get repeated over and over again, and this is just the complete opposite. So, that's kind of nice. It's kind of a breath of fresh air as well. So, while cruising again with Pink, Pickford, and Don Dawson, Mitch drinks beer and smokes marijuana for the first time. Again, he's probably the most interesting character in the movie because he's doing this for the first time. After a game of mailbox baseball, a neighborhood resident...
I like how you come up with a name for it.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what it's called, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've seen that before in American media, because that's the thing. All American suburban homes have their mailbox right on the fucking.
Yeah. I have seen the whole smashing the mailboxes thing.
Yeah, in the UK, obviously we don't have suburbs like in America, and you can put our mail in in our fucking house. We don't really have mailboxes, so. Which Americans, for some reason, need a mailbox, but whatever. Anyway, the point is that, they're doing this mailbox baseball, and then a guy brandishing a gun threatens to call the police, and they barely escape after the resident fires at their car. And again, this is some drama that we finally get. I was like, oh shit, wow, this is crazy. Something that isn't just a day in the life, even though none of them react to it after. It
is one of those things just yep, okay, that's the thing that happened.
Yeah, man, fucking Ben Affleck's like, oh yeah, I got a shotgun pointed at me. And he talks about it, and this guy actually shot at them, and I don't think it's ever mentioned after this. There are some crazy people in Texas, so I guess it could happen, but it's not the most a day in the life thing ever, is it? You think they would say it, to when they got back to the fucking Emporium, right?
Yeah, it like that. And again, I feel like sometimes actually it would almost be better if the film didn't even like try. Like sometimes when it does have like a little bit of a plot, it's kind of like, when it has a little bit of a plot, it kind of reminds you of the fact it doesn't have a lot of a plot. So I almost feel like sometimes scenes like that, I mean, it's still a good film, but it's almost like, you don't really get anything out of those scenes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can understand that, especially if there isn't any consequences from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Mitch also buys a 6-pack of beer at 14 years old, and Link later making this was probably saying, look how crazy things were back in the day, man. And again, that's what I was talking about, the 90s compared to, the 70s. It's like, you could be 14 years old, just go into, I mean, he's clearly not 18.
Yeah.
He's just, and just be like, yep, absolutely. Yeah, I shall be going to college in the fall. I haven't decided yet. Now, can I have my 6-pack, please? Mitch runs into his middle school friends, and they have a plan to get revenge on O'Banion. It culminates with them dumping paint on O'Banion, who lives in a fit of rage. Again, kind of one of those things which is like, I remember when that happened, back in the day. That's exactly one of those stories, right?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like, it's not like, I guess it's not a very poetic, like, justice, and it's not that clever either. I was a little bit disappointed by the Carpents in a way. I was kind of like, okay.
Well, what the fuck did you expect?
I don't know. I thought, like, they'd kill him. No, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. There's not like, I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess, pour some paint over someone's head.
Yeah.
But like, when they say, I guess, like, the problem is he says it like, oh, I've got a plan to, like, get back at them. And you think it's going to be a little bit more sophisticated and just, just tell him that you're there and he'll run out and then we'll just throw paint at him.
No, I think it was fine. I mean, look, that's what you expect, right? That's what I was expecting, honestly.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of in the IT Crowd when Moss says his famous line, I can see why you didn't want to use the word plan.
Okay. So, by the way, Vince Vaughn was almost cast as O'Banion before Affleck. Did you know that? Link later put it, Ben was smart and full of life. You don't cast the unappealing person, you cast the appealing person. What a shot at Vince Vaughn that is.
That's true. No, yeah, like Vince Vaughn seemed like he would be kind of creepy pedo. Or like, I think he would be a worse pedo. Like, also, I mean, I suppose it is definitely true that because there's like a scene where like a woman's like kind of, or a girl, I should say really, is like charmed by Matthew McConaughey. And I feel like, to be honest, if you are going to have a character who's like a creepy pedo, you should at least make them attractive.
A guy like Matthew McConaughey wouldn't be hanging around with 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
He like, you would be hanging around with people who are your own age. Probably.
Yeah, although there are like the random. I do think there is like the phenomenon of like the random people.
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. They don't look.
They tend to be ugly. I get you.
Well, yeah, I mean, not necessarily ugly. They don't look like fucking Matthew McConaughey. Is the point I'm making. Yeah. So, Ben Affleck, man, it's crazy that he started in this movie, and 30 years later he's doing Dunkin' Donuts commercials with Ice Spice. What a run he's been on. Like, you do know who Ice Spice is, right?
Ice Spice, she's the person who Taylor Swift was racist against.
Exactly. You know what she looks like, right?
Yeah. She looks like she just look racially ambiguous.
That's a good way of putting it. But yeah, so recently Ben Affleck has.
And she twerks all the time. I know, like on Twitter, a lot of the time people will post like Ice Spice gifs.
Look, if you're a black rapper who's a female, obviously, then you have to twerk. Like, yeah,
that's how it is.
If you don't twerk, then there's no. What are you?
Disrespectful.
Yeah, like Megan Thee Stallion, fucking Nicki Minaj, Cardi B. I'm sure there's some others. Fucking Lizzo.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Anyway. Maybe that's the exception. But yeah, Ice Spice and Ben Affleck, what a combo. So after the Emporium closes, an impromptu keg party is planned in a field under a moonlight tower. So we just go to another party now, and that's it. It's car drives and parties, and that's it. That's the movie. I think, obviously, cars were very easy to purchase back in the day. They were a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And, also, like, in the UK, you have to be 17 to get lessons. So you're probably not going to be able to drive until you're almost 18. But in the United States, you can like drive when you're like 16, and that seems to be perfectly legal. And even if it's not legal, who the fuck cares? That seems to be the case. Certainly in the 70s. Anyway, so
they're just very cavalier about it.
Well, especially back here in the 70s, which is, again...
It hadn't worked out that cars could kill people yet. And also, like, there seems to be a world where everyone just drives drunk as well. Like, I refuse to believe there are designated drivers involved in any step of this.
No, absolutely not. But that's the thing. I know that there was a massive problem with drunk driving or underage. Well, it wasn't underage, I think. It was like drunk driving, young adults or teenagers drunk driving in the 70s and 80s. And basically there was loads of deaths because of that. Loads of teenagers killed themselves or got other people killed because of that. And that's, I think, part of the reason why the laws were changed and then the drinking age went up to 21.
Should have just raised the driving age, idiots.
Yeah, I mean, that's also a solution, you know? But I guess it's easier to raise the drinking age. Yeah, I think, again, it's the contrast between the 90s and the 70s, and that's part of the reason why Linklater wanted to make this movie. So we have Cynthia, Tony, and Mike. We haven't talked about them. These are the nerds, I guess. And then I think it's fucking Mike gets into a fight. This is Adam Goldberg's character.
Yes.
Yeah. And, then of course we have that line from Cynthia. She says the 80s can't get any worse. And yeah, then along came Reagan, and it was not radical. And again, this is like these teenagers at the time thinking, oh yeah, the 70s is shit. Like, God, what an awful period to be growing up in. And again, this is Linklater, I think, making the contrast between certainly the 90s and how much more like radical it was compared to, the current time period. And indeed, that has seemingly just grown as the years have gone by. Like we'll never get back to that era, Michael.
Yeah, I mean it is, and I think the world is worse for it. Definitely, I think we can all agree on that.
It was not the 80s did not get more radical. Neither did the 90s. The radicalness stopped in January 1981. Whenever Reagan gave his inauguration speech, it was over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cynthia and Matthew McConaughey agree to meet up. Of course, not wed at all. She's 17. He's 22. Again, I keep saying he's 22. I imagine he's that age, but whatever. And then Tony and Sabrina. But this one was really weird because like this Tony guy seems like a good guy. He points out that McConaughey's a bit of a creep, and then look, you could say, oh, they're both in high school, but he is 17 and she is like literally one day out of middle school.
Yes.
And he kisses her goodnight. And this, again, there is no like moral, like, I guess, condemnation of this. This is just, oh, look at this happening.
He wasn't fully on board with her making weird comments about doing anything that he wanted her to do sexually. So that's good.
No, that's great. Yeah, and then, of course, the stoner guy played by Rory Coltrane. He's going on about George Washington, growing weed and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all good. So
random stoner talk, we love it.
I guess.
Oh, actually, there were I will say, one of the things that I did realize is there were a few things which is something I think you get in like these kind of like artsy like films or whatever. I don't know if artsy is the right term, but like these films that are just made by, but basically like scenes of like characters kind of saying like almost personal treatises on like random topics, and it's like people don't actually talk like that, and it's okay, but it's just something which I feel like, I don't know, it's like a very filmy thing to have like a character be like, oh man, like I've been thinking about, some kind of obscure thing. And it happens a few times in this film. It doesn't really bother me, but it is kind of dumb.
Yeah, no, I think that is the case for sure. So, let's get into, I guess, the end of the movie. So there's a group of 5 people and they're smoking, teenagers. They're smoking marijuana. On the 50-yard line, McConaughey's there, fucking Pink Floyd's there, and a couple of others are there. And the stoner guy's there as well. And yeah, Pink says, if these are the best years of my life, remind me to kill myself.
Yeah,
and I think
it's probably quite funny because I feel like for Jason London that might be true.
But that is an ironic line, I think, because I think Linklater made this movie because of the nostalgia he has for the past, and I think a lot of people who would have been when this movie came out, I don't know, like fucking in their 30s, middle aged, would have looked back at this time period and would be like, oh yeah, I wish I could go back to when I was a kid in high school. And yeah, that's the ironic line, like, kill myself if these are my best years. It's like, you don't know what's coming, pal. You don't know how shit life can be. Just like you don't know how shit the world can be because of Ronald Reagan in the 80s coming along, and everything we've talked about with how all of this shit which went on in this night in the 70s was clamped down on, shall we say, with vigor in the coming decades. So yeah, I do like that line, and I think that gives another indication as to why this movie was made, what Linklater's trying to say. And indeed, the last shot also gives an indication of that, which we'll get on to.
There is one kind of funny thing about that, I do think, which is that, like, obviously, this kind of, like, I said before, this is kind of, I think, a bit of an idealized view of high school life. I'm sure it's partially based on reality, but, like, this is a world where you can, like,
about it?
Well, like, you go to parties just Well, I suppose, I guess you could say, well, it's the end of the year, of course it's going to be a party. I don't know, like, the idea of just everyone drives around and they smoke drugs and you get along with everyone and all that
They
kind of stuff.
smoke
I'm not
drugs.
saying they smoke drugs. I'm not saying it's idealized in the sense it couldn't happen.
Well, look, no,
but I'm just saying, like, I don't think this was, like, the average, like, person. Like, the average person in high school was like, yes, this is just what happened.
I mean, I don't know, like, maybe not, but, like, of course, you're following, like, the high school quarterback who, as pointed out at the end, they can do whatever they want. Like, they're the most popular people in high school, and he's, like, the main character. So, obviously, like, this was his kind of life.
Yeah,
and
well,
indeed,
all I was going to say is that, like, the fact that within that context, he's like, man, if these are the best years of my life, it's like, to be honest, like, if I had a high school, I liked high school and I enjoyed high school, and my high school life was nothing like that. So it's like, yeah, honestly, if I had a high school life like that, I would be like, oh yeah, this probably is going to be the best years of my life.
But that's the thing, you don't know that. Of course, you don't. You would not know that, which is the whole point. Like, this is a 17-year-old kid who knows fucking nothing.
Ignorant kids.
Well, like, yeah, again, that's the thing. Linklater is looking back and laughing at his and other kids his age, their ignorance. That's what he's doing. It's like, if only we knew, man. And of course, you're right. This is like a high school like quarterback who's like the best, player on his team. So he's the most popular guy. But like, even like the fucking nerds, like who have never been to a party before. I think that's the implication, or maybe they say it. But they, they show up to the party, and like one of them gets with Matthew McConaughey, and she enjoys that, even though the creepiness aside. And the other one gets with a 14-year-old. Like that, even the fucking nerds are having a great time, Michael. And yes, one of them does get beaten up and get a black eye, but you know what? Like, he got into a fight, and like that, that for
and he has himself to blame.
Yeah, but that was good for his masculinity. That was good for his ego. So yeah, I think that's the deal. I think Linklater acknowledges the difference in like social, like, I guess, classes in high school between the popular kids and the not so popular kids. But even for the not so popular ones, they appear to be, being able to have a good time. So I mean, I don't know, of course. This is just me kind of guessing and maybe trusting him too much, but whatever. This is all I've got to go on. What can I say? Let's get on to the final bit of the movie, Michael, because, of course, the police arrive, and Conrad, the football coach, lectures Pink about hanging out with losers and insists that, he signed the pledge. But Pink says that he might play football, but he's not going to sign it, and then he leaves with his friend to Houston to obtain the tickets to Aerosmith. And, you got to be a rebel, man. That's the message. It's the 70s. Let's just have fun. It's the summer, This is the time in your life where you don't have to conform to rules, and, so just fucking do what you want. I guess that is... I'm not sure if that's the message, but that's what Linklater is saying was the attitude, I guess, of the time. Yeah, so then we go back to Mitch Kramer, so he leaves the keg party with Julie. They drive to a nearby hill overlooking the town to make out. Mitch arrives home after sunrise to find his mother has waited up for him. She decides against punishment, but warns him about coming home late again. Mitch goes to his bedroom, puts on his headphones, and listens to Slow Ride by Farcat. That right there is like the most nostalgic moment of the movie. Like, he's just had the most incredible night of his life, and like, he comes home late and his mother isn't going to punish him, and he just comes into his room and listens to Slow Ride, which of course I imagine was a very popular song back in the 70s that indeed Linklater and everyone else his age, liked. So yeah, it's just, that is the most nostalgic moment. It's like, oh, what a perfect night. I got away with it scot-free, and I'm just coming back and listening to one of my favorite songs. Slow Ride keeps playing as Pink, Wooderson, Slater, and Simone Kerr, who's his girlfriend, by the way, Pink's girlfriend, travel down a highway to purchase their tickets. So yeah, the seniors and Matthew McConaughey, what's the thematic reason for that last shot, Michael?
It's to show them growing up. They're heading off to their life, and they're leaving high school behind them, except no, they are seniors. So it's showing them just embracing their own way by going out and doing their own thing that they want to do.
Yeah, well, yeah, but let's be more specific here. Obviously, it's the start of the day, it's the dawn, so that has a thematic implication as well. So it's like they're just starting their lives, and indeed, the road that they're on is empty. You could say it's an open road, and
it's the only road that they will ever know, and they don't know where it goes, but it's home to them, and they walk alone.
Shut up. No, wrong fucking era. Shut up. No. So no, but the point is, it's an open road. So whatever, hey, they don't really know, and they're of course going to an Aerosmith concert, which they're looking forward to doing. But the point is, like, the final shot, it's quite simple. It's an open road ahead of them. It's the start of the day. They've got their whole lives ahead of them. They can do whatever they want. This is what a great time in their lives. The they can do what they like, you know. And again, this is what I was referring to in terms of Linklater saying this was the best time in his life, perhaps, and you know, kids his age, this was the best time in their life as well, or people his age, I should say, who were kids back in the 70s. Because yeah, you could do anything. It's like, oh, we can go wherever we want, you know. We've got all this freedom, and that's the key word, Michael. We've got all this freedom. This night is just totally freeing. There's so much freedom. Anyone can do what they want, and the movie ends with the ultimate, I guess, shot of freedom, like just this open road ahead of them. And yeah, then I guess because what came after, in terms of the politics of the time, and in terms of the you know, their lives, you know, more responsibilities, etc. That freedom went away, and yeah, there's a sadness to it. There's a nostalgic. Of course, there's nostalgia towards it, but yeah, there is some sadness to it. And I think if you were born in the late 50s or early 60s, this movie must have been like crack to them, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Do you agree? Do you agree with my interpretation of that last shot?
I think that is a very valid interpretation, and I like how you considered various aspects of filmmaking, such as the shot composition.
No, thank you. Well, it's not, just the final shot. I think it's obvious, I think, what he's going for there. So, The Legacy, Michael, by the way. So, this is apparently one of the greatest high school movies of all time and one of the greatest cult movies of all time. Would you agree with that, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what is interesting is, in 2004, 3 of Linklater's former classmates, whose surnames are Wooderson, Slater, and Floyd, filed a defamation lawsuit against Linklater,
Oh, wow.
claiming it to be the basis for the characters on the film. The lawsuit was filed in New Mexico rather than Texas because New Mexico has a longer statute of limitations, but the suit was dismissed.
Wow.
Which I'm not surprised at, really, at all. Like, I don't know how it's defamation. Like,
yeah.
That's ridiculous. So, Matthew McConaughey also, you know, reprised his role. He was the real, I think, star from this movie. He's the character that people remember, which is kind of funny, of course. Linklater also described his intent to create an inverse John Hughes film. So you know John Hughes, right?
I do know John Hughes, but I don't really know of what he does. Well, he's like
Ferris Bueller.
Yes.
Home Alone.
Yes, we've reviewed Home Alone. Home Alone is what I really do. Yeah. So he does just like kind of, I was going to say generic family films, but is that accurate?
Linklater said, you know, what is an inverse John Hughes film? It's when the drama is so low key. I don't remember teenagers being that dramatic. I just remember just trying to go with the flow, socialize, fit in, and be cool. The stakes were really low. To get Aerosmith tickets or not, that's a big thing. It was really rare when the star-crossed lovers from the opposite side of the tracks, and the girl gets pregnant, and there's a car crash and somebody dies. That didn't really happen much. But riding around and trying to look for something to do with music cranked up, now that happened a lot. It's nostalgia for that time period. It's like a day in the life, like you said. It's like, I just want to create the most realistic, you know, version of events possible that I remember from the 70s, and that's why I believe all that stuff about the hazing and everything, because that's what he was doing. So I imagine it's quite close to the truth. Let's conclude now, Michael. You go first.
Yeah, this film, I think we covered it in, you know, pretty substantially. Ultimately, it is like a film about nothing happening, but, well, you've used the word, so I'll steal it. Again, vibes. Just like having a, summer experience, summer romance, meeting new friends, all that kind of stuff. It's a good feeling. I don't know how rewatchable the film is. I think I was kind of like, well, you see it and then you kind of experience it, but I don't know if I'd necessarily be like, oh yeah, I want to watch it like loads and loads of times, knowing kind of everything that happens and, whatever. So I would say it's probably not like perfect. I think I'm going to give it I'm only going to give it a high 7, just because, I think vibes can only carry it so far, but high 7.
I think this is an 8 out of 10. Again, I think you need to be in the right mood to watch this. You have to be in a certain mood to enjoy it. But just the Rotten Tomato consensus I'm going to read. Featuring an excellent cast, a precise feel for the 70s, and a killer soundtrack. There you go, precise feel for the 70s. It isn't confused as a funny, affectionate, and clear-eyed look at high school life. So there you go, it seems pretty authentic to me. Janet Maslin of The Times, New York, wrote, Dazed and Confused has an enjoyable, playful spirit, one that amply compensates for its lack of structure. And I think that's the perfect way to sum it up. Yes, it has this playful spirit, and there is no structure, but it's fine, because the spirit is great. The vibes are great, Michael, to use that word again. And that can carry a movie. And that is what this movie, is. It's just vibes, and the vibes carry it. So that means it's an enjoyable experience despite the lack of plot. And yeah, of course, but there is something more to it. Of course, there is something more, and that is the fact that yes, it is Linklater kind of looking back at those times and thinking, look at all that freedom. God, it's just completely different to now. And indeed, Owen Gleiberman gave the film an A and says Linklater captures the comic goofiness of the time. He also evokes its liberating spirit, which again is, we're using those words a lot. I mean, liberation or freedom or spirit or vibes. And that's what you get. So I think people who are around the age of Linklater would really love this movie, like absolutely love it. Because of course, there's nostalgia on top of that, and we get a bit of nostalgia. So, watching this, it's like, oh yeah, remember when the last day of high school? Like everyone can kind of relate to that. But yeah, for me, even though you can't really relate to a lot of it, it's still an 8 out of 10. So yeah. Decent movie, Michael. What are we doing next week? Well, I'll actually answer that question because it's in 2 weeks we are doing our first Spooktober movie, which is The Exorcist.
Yes, The Exorcist,
which is actually from the 70s. In 1973. It's its 50-year anniversary, and of course there's a new Exorcist movie coming out.
Let's see if that's a more accurate portrayal of 70s childhood than this film.
Well, that's the thing. I think from reading the reviews, you get the sense that it was an accurate portrayal, and Linklater said he wanted to create an accurate portrayal, not like a fucking John Hughes movie, which is, Home Alone is like the most ridiculous thing you can think of, So yeah, no, I have to trust that this was close to the truth, like I said. So yeah. Thank you for listening to our review of Dazed and Confused. We've been selecting and reflecting on it because of its 30-year anniversary. And who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening and goodbye.
Goodbye.